It's Don Anderson here and Sunny Danforth. Say hi, Sunny.
Hey, Don, it's wonderful to see you. It is fabulous, or let's see, wonderful Wednesday.
What wonderful Wednesday. It would be fabulous Friday. That'd be even better. But
Right,
it's
right,
wonderful
right.
Wednesday and welcome audience, captive audience. We're glad you're all here. So
Yes,
really
we
looking
are.
forward to looking forward to another day. And as usual, our politicians give us plenty of stuff to talk about. The one thing about this that's great is there's never a shortage of topics, right, Sunny?
Never, never, ever, ever.
Yeah. So, so before we jump into that, have you all experienced this heat wave? We have just been getting killed out here.
Yes, absolutely. I'll tell you, I've got 105 degrees right now. The peak was
Ooh.
106. I checked the
Mhm.
thermometer right before I came in my office, and 105. And we have standing wheat right behind us. And
Mhm.
today they started the harvest, and right
Mhm.
behind the harvester, they disked, so, a fire break, because I'm right at the city line, and
Right.
then it goes into a wheat field. And
Mhm.
I went, okay, thank you, because we were sweating the 4th of July.
Oh yeah, it was. Here, and we're not used to Washington. Said it. Summers in the Portland, Vancouver area. It does get 100 degrees in the summer. But what was unique about this was it got to 100, 101, but it never cooled off. So ordinarily, in the middle of the night, you get down into the 50s. And the lowest it got was like 68 a couple of nights ago. So now you're really hurting, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's not cooling off here, and it's it's
Mhm.
I'm glad I have air conditioning.
Hey, this is how I know it's hot. So my mother grew up in Mississippi, right? And she's like 90. And so older people can never be warm enough. It got so hot, she actually took off her sweater. Didn't turn on the air conditioner though. You
Oh
gotta
my
make it.
gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, she's got comfortable. I'm glad she got comfortable.
Those Mississippi, Georgia, Louisiana girls is like, hey, they're they're never warm enough.
No, no. Well, yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. I thought I would start with a little, I'll call it a monologue, if you will, because I find these historical things really interesting. And I did a little research on this a while back, and I sent you a link on it, which you can see there on online there about eugenics and Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger. So this is just a quick YouTube about her. But if you ever want to do a little more research in order to understand just what the radical left is about, then this is worth watching. But before jumping into that, I think it's really important to understand that in terms of the radical left, you have to always think in terms of their overarching goal. Like, what are they looking to accomplish? And for communism to work, you first have to destroy the capacity to reason. The capacity to reason is given to us by our parents, and best done with both parents to deliver that to you and with the church to coach them in terms of how to do that. That's one of the reasons why communism's first thing is destroy the family and then destroy the church. Because then you have people who can't think. They have people who can't think, then they can't support a constitutional republic. And what do we see going on right now? We see exactly that. So there's a couple of quick factoids about Margaret Sanger that we'll move into our other items. Um, One of the first things she did, a lot of people don't realize this stuff, back in 1927, there was a Supreme Court case called Buck versus Bell that she really supported. And basically, the result of that case was that the state could force sterilization on women that they deemed unfit to have children, and they can do it without the woman's knowledge. So you go in for procedure A, and you come out getting procedure A. Let's say you have a gallbladder issue or a gallstone. They take care of the gallstone and your uterus at the same time, and you never know about it. And that kind of stuff went on for decades. And a lot of the things that we saw that the Nazis did, they got it directly from Margaret Sanger. It's just crazy. So the objective was to get rid of low IQ whites, blacks, kids who were born with birth defects, and other people deemed inferior. And she literally said this in her writings. In fact, Joseph Goebbels, I love these titles that they had back in the 30s and 40s. In Germany, Goebbels is, of course, Hitler's Reich Minister of Propaganda. You got to love it. At least they called the title what it was. We have ministers of propaganda too, but we just don't tell you that's what they are.
Right, right.
So at least the Hitler gang gets an A for honesty. The person that founded Planned Parenthood was also a ranking member of the KKK. She was given an honorific title by the KKK. People don't know this stuff. I mean, she was great friends with Woodrow Wilson, who was a notorious racist. Henry Ford, who was pretty much the same. I call them race hustlers, as you know. W.E.B. Du Bois was one of the founders of the NAACP and a notorious race hustler. He met with her, and they put together a program to counsel Black women to go to doctors in order to have these, what's the best way to call it, have these treatments made to make them infertile, because they wouldn't go to white doctors because they were afraid of them back then. So W.E. Du Bois set it up so they go to doctors that they would trust because they were recommended by him, and they do the same thing. I mean, this is that history that people just don't know, but it went on. One last point. I think it's really good to know this stuff. She had like 10 commandments, if you will, of Planned Parenthood. I'm just going to read you the first 4. And I won't go through all of them, but the first 4, all of them are fascinating. But here's the first 4. See if you see this as you look at what's been happening in the media. The first one, the most merciful thing that a large family can do is kill one of their children. That was one of her bullets. The second one, the marriage license should only be given the right to a common household, not to parenthood. Think about what we hear from the left, right? The third, all of our problems are the result of overbreeding amongst the working class. What are they doing? Everything they do is designed to impact, the family. Black soldiers and Jews are a menace to the human race. What do we see in the media about the way the left treats Jews lately, right? So nothing new under the sun, just all repeated. I thought you'd find that all, pretty interesting stuff. So, yeah.
And when they eliminate history, that's exactly how it gets repeated. And that's what they've been, trying to do, is eliminate history, and kind of making sense that this is where we need to go. We need to go on the whole transgender movement instead of teaching history.
Oh, 100% true. You might remember in George Orwell's book, 1984, I think it was, he talked about something called the memory hole, right? And so what they would do is they'd have some program that the government would put on, but once the government didn't want that program anymore, they would disappear the program like it never existed in the first place. And they do the same thing with history. We want to eliminate history, hence the tearing down of statues and that sort of thing. So you have nothing to fall back on from a tradition standpoint, from an educational standpoint. So they want you to think what they want you to think.
Wow. I like Bobby's comment. This is a wow for sure. And yes, it is.
It's crazy. And it ties directly in, and I sent you all, you can see this link on this article. Let's see. I didn't send that, I guess, so I'll speak to it. So Planned Parenthood boasts that they are the leading provider of transgender surgeries, right? How about that? Look at the tie-in for that. So let's see.
They boast about it.
They're number one. The organization received $1.8 billion in taxpayer funding between 2019 and 2021. That's almost $2 billion in taxpayer funding to basically kill babies, if you will. But also their newest business line, if you will, we have the abortion industry. That's a product that they deliver. They make a lot of money on it. But now they have an expanding new business unit, and that is like transitioning boys into girls and girls into boys. And it's proven to be hugely profitable. And if you look at the media, who do you see behind these things? That's another one of the services they look to provide. So there is Planned Parenthood at the forefront of destroying the family.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a plan, and for those of us with our eyes open, realizing there's a plan, which is why we all have to push back on it. And we have to resist this and push back on this 100%.
And you think about it, I think I saw a stat the other day, about a year or two ago was the first time the American, the replacement rate is 2.1. You got to have 2.1 kids per couple or kids per mom in order to replace your population. For the first time in history, we've fallen beneath that. And probably the reason, and we're at like 2.0 or 2, just barely under 2.1. But a lot of the reason for that we're not falling further is due to immigration. If you take away immigration, we're beneath that.
Yeah.
So over the long term, a country can't survive like that, which I think is precisely the end game. I think I saw something the other day. South Korea is the lowest ever in recorded history for a country that wasn't in famine or war. They're at zero point 0.7. Is that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah. So Lori has asked a question. Are we past the point of recovery from this corruption?
Mm,
And I say no. You know, it has taken us decades to get where we're at right now.
mhm,
It's taken decades. And now is the waking up. I believe that we're in the waking up moment. And this is why you're seeing a lot of pushback. And just like when we clean house, it's going to get messy. It's not going to be fun. There's going to be a lot of disruption until to in order to turn this around. But it takes action. This is me speaking. It's
mhm,
going to take the action of the citizens because there's no country coming in here to save us.
mhm,
We have to save us.
mhm.
And
Well,
what are your
100%
thoughts,
agree.
Don?
Yeah, 100% agree. I couldn't have said it better. I think uh, back in when the election was first stolen, I was like probably the rest of you. I was like, this is the end. I was really depressed and down. But since then, you look at the last couple of years in terms of where the wins have come from. I mean, last week was probably the winningest week for grassroots conservatism in American history. I mean, probably going back to the Civil War. You look at those cases from the Supreme Court, which were probably even more important than the Biden disaster. Those are huge. That Chevron case, you cannot speak enough, for what that means in terms of dismantling the hidden state. So yeah, we got punched in the face and we finally woke up and started fighting back. I think we got a chance for winning this thing back. Sonny, your thoughts?
We do, but with the right president, because it's because of Trump that we've got the justices that we got. And it's through our courts is one of the reasons we're in the position that we're in. Okay, because we lost a lot of cases that we should have not lost. And if you stay to our Constitution as written, instead of saying, well, it's fluid, it's a living Constitution and it's fluid. Well, no, it isn't. It is black and white. And all you have to do is read the black part and not try to interpret what it is between the lines. That's how I feel. And but it is us taking the action, and there's so many things that have happened to wake us up, and clearly the one world order movement is still on the march, and it's been like pedal to the metal, and we have to resist and say no, we're not doing that. And it takes money, it takes lawsuits, but it takes judges that are willing to fight for what is right. And so, like this, Don mentioned the Chevron decision. This is going to be so far-reaching for decades. It truly, truly is. But we have to keep the courts. And this is why right now, today, AOC filed, I believe it was today, filed impeachment against two of our justices
Mhm.
because they don't like the results, so they go on the attack.
Right,
We don't
right.
like results, and we go, well, we'll just next time we'll fix it.
Well, sure. That's how the constitutional process was supposed to work. The give and take. You don't. If you're too far to the right, then the next time around you tack to the middle. If you're too far to the left, you tack. This is the first time ever in history, I say starting in 2016, I could think of anyway, where they just doubled and tripled down. I mean, clearly those weren't the right things. The
Yeah.
results they got, they were terrible, and they just kept doubling and tripling down on it. They're about destroying the system, not playing within the system. It'd be like having a football game, and the other team decides that they get 10 downs to go 10 yards, and you only get four,
Right.
and that's how they play.
Yes, and so I mean, and having our open border, so we had the the COVID test to see who would comply.
Mhm.
And we had the demonization of all of our systems for those that didn't comply. A lot of people, middle class was destroyed through the whole COVID and pandemic and the plandemic, I'll say.
Mhm.
And now we are seeing for these last 3.5 years, the open border. And this is part of it. This is to displace us and what's going on, which brings me to a great story of today that the House passed that the House passed the bill to require proof of citizenship for voting in federal elections. It went along party lines, although 10 Democrats joined the Republicans to get it passed. Is this going to go to the Senate? It's going to go to the Senate, but will the Senate do anything? Let's see.
Mhm.
I don't think so. I think the Republicans, but will it pass? Let's see what happens, because 5 Democrats, and I will tell you, 2 of them are from Texas,
Mhm.
one from North Carolina, one from Maine, and believe it or not, one from the state of Washington.
That's
So
good.
they joined the Republicans. And those that did not join on, frankly, I believe it's treasonous,
Sure.
because you are not willing. Though all of these people that have been elected are there to represent us. We have a representative government. They all took an oath to follow and uphold our Constitution. And our Constitution says that citizens are who votes. And this bill is to solidify that. And it shouldn't even have to be solidified,
Mhm.
but we have states that have saying, well, we'll allow, they're registering them and we'll allow them to vote in state and local elections. And this bill is every American should be for this,
Oh,
that it is only citizens that are able to vote in elections.
and you think to yourself, okay, what is there, 535 members of the House, and only like five of those 535, roughly half of them are Democrats. So 230, 220 couldn't vote for something like this. That is like absolutely stunning. I mean, there's almost
198. So the vote ended up 221 to 198.
so how in the world can that few people vote for something as obvious as protecting the sovereignty of the
Yeah,
United States? That tells you that it's basically a strategic plan, and the strategic
it
plan
is.
is to flood the country with illegals who then can vote, and then will be on the dole, and then will, so they think, then wind up voting left, and also to create chaos and anarchy. It is straight out of the Stalin playbook. I mean, and this is another one of those things that people, if they don't know history, they don't realize that this is how it was done before. In fact, another aside, I saw this article, should have published this, printed this one too. It was Kamala Harris was heard talking, and she says she's going to litter the streets with money, like $3 trillion, to like help people invest. We're going to invest in America, $3 trillion, without any thought to what that would do in terms of inflation,
Hmm.
because they don't care. They want inflation.
They
I mean,
do. They
that's
do.
inflation causes chaos,
Yeah.
and
They want
chaos
the
equals,
chaos.
yeah, they want chaos. That's how you get one party government.
It's true. And something along, I have another story up here from the Epic Times, is back in um, May of this year, the House passed an electoral integrity bill to restore the citizenship question to the census. And you know what? I didn't know anything about that until today, when I was looking up some stories, and that was like a little sub headline. And I said, oh, wow, when did they do that?
Mhm.
That was back in May, on May 9th. And it was passed right along party lines, 206 Republicans to 202. And why wouldn't you want the citizenship question to be on the census? Trump tried to get that
Mhm.
on there and was shot down, and it was tied up in the courts, and the courts said, nope, you can't do that. And frankly, I didn't understand that court decision. That
Mhm.
that for me never made any sense.
Well, never forget, elitists are all about one world government. They pretty much have said that the whole world be ruled by Brussels, or at least the West, anyway. And that's that's why we have no southern border, basically.
No. And so today I was looking on social media a bit, and I was on X, and in fact, I spend very little time on Facebook anymore.
Mhm.
But anyway, I was there looking around, and all of these people are coming out of the woodwork from every race, creed, you name it, socioeconomic level, are out of the woodwork saying, why would Democrats not vote for this? To have citizens only voting in our country. People are pissed off.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about that is, come election time, the people that are running against them, that's what you call election fodder.
Yes.
And that's why you want to have these votes. Even when you know you're going to lose, you put those votes out there anyway, right? Because,
Well,
yeah.
they're showing their true colors and they hate America. If you are not willing to follow our Constitution, you are on the other side. You want the destruction of our country.
And the as bad as this sounds, the great thing about the policies of the left is they always fail miserably, and people wind up feeling it. So they can lie through their teeth all they want on a TV screen, talking about there was more jobs now than when Biden was
Mhm.
around. Uh, Suddenly, we're hearing this noise about the unemployment went down this last quarter. People look around, or there's no inflation, which is a blatant lie. All you
Yeah.
gotta do is go to the grocery store. I went grocery shopping yesterday. Got
Yeah.
sticker shock again.
Again,
Yeah,
every
again.
time you go.
Right, right. Yeah, it's like I'm thinking. I remember back 30 years ago or so when the whole Carter thing was going down, and people making a decision, and people talked about something. They were serious, whether to get their pharmaceuticals or whether to eat dog food. Right. For some people, that's real. Or cut your pills in half and try to stretch them out. And people died because of that stuff. Because of the impact of high interest rates, high inflation, all that kind of stuff. If you're living on the edge, this stuff what this guy's doing, for a lot of people, this means maybe you're not going on that vacation to Puerto Vallarta, right?
Right.
Maybe it means that you're gonna not eat at the 4-star restaurant. Maybe you go to like Taco Bell. For a lot of people, that Taco Bell, that used to be your evening out. Now you don't get that. And for those who weren't getting that, now we're talking about cat food and cutting pills in half. That this
You're
is there's a
seeing
reason.
spam commercials on television.
Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So,
I saw some, and my mom and I this past weekend, and my
mhm,
mom goes, I don't know when I've seen a spam commercial on
yeah.
television.
So what Trump and any Republican running needs to do is they need to talk about that stuff 20, because you can lie through your teeth about fake economic data like the media does. What do you feel at home? Every time there's a debate, they want to accuse Trump of lying. All he's got to say is, what was your grocery bill versus 5 years ago? What was your gas prices 5 years ago, right?
Right.
What was the crime rate in your neighborhood 5 years ago, right? That's just talk the stuff people can feel, because they will lie about this data till the cows come home. I
Yeah.
saw something. It was another interesting way they play with these statistics. How to lie with statistics. Remember that book? It was, gosh, what was that? It had to do with how they calculate inflation. So they'll do things like uh, leave out like food and like basic necessities. So they're including like industrial stuff. Well, if you're a family, you don't care about that stuff. You're trying to pay the grocery bills and get gas. So that's how they manipulate the data, or they'll compare it to this month versus last month, and not compare it to now versus 3 years ago. So
Yes.
these people are tricky with their lies.
I'll tell you what else is getting manipulated that people might not be aware of. You ought to go to your city council meetings. So I was in our city council meeting the other day, and hearing about our city. Our city needs to build a new water tower, because we have a water tower that is reached the end of its life and it should have been built a few years back. So in order to get a grant, there's always strings tied to grants. And
Always.
the grant, and one of the strings tied to the grant is that our water rates are too low in our city. The water rates are too low. And so it was calculated out, we would have to raise the water rates 35 or so, 38%. percent.
not 3%, not 2%.
Not three. No, no, too low. And you know what? Why the hell? Well, it just doesn't match everywhere else. Well, who the hell cares? I mean,
Yeah.
there's the people that are on fixed incomes, are senior citizens, and the poor. This is who it affects. It doesn't affect others.
Well, these
And
people
but
who write
you
those
have
reports,
the
yeah,
government, the state and federal government coming in that your water rates are too low. So if you're wondering about what the hell's going on, let me tell you, any grant that anything is tied to, there's always strings attached.
yeah. It's,
Always pay
this is
attention.
why, yeah,
And that
true,
stuff is wrong.
yep,
So,
it's
but I
totally,
wanted to answer something else if I could, Don.
sure.
Okay. Lori said that she's on Truth, and I'm on Truth Social there. I'm going back and forth between X and Truth. And then somebody said that there's no place that to walk in. Oh, yeah. Lori said Oregon has no walk in voting locations. Actually, every county, and they must have some voting booths at the county elections office. And I know that this past election, the primary in Umatilla County, I have never saw so many voting booths in there because people on social media were going, just go to the county seat and go to the county elections office and go vote. You can have one day voting in person if that's what you want to do. You can go down there.
Hmm.
And they set up a lot. So every county is going to have some inside. That's where ours are in Umatilla County. They're inside the building at the elections office, might be out in the hallway, but there is a little, they had like, I don't know, six or eight of them
Hmm.
set up there. And, it's, so I just wanted to answer that a little bit.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
our utilities are going up
Mhm. And the thing
along
is, yeah,
with, all of the food costs.
yeah, it's just criminal when you think about it. I mean, you
It
know,
is.
what else in your family budget just goes up by 35%, 30%, right? 1%, 2%, maybe you start getting above 3%, and 2 or 3% is what natural inflation should be anyway. You start getting above that. So they're looking at doing this increase at a time when inflation's already been killing everybody for 3 or 4 years. This would be like called the wrong. It'd be like going on vacation the day after you got laid off, right? It's like that doesn't make sense. You don't do those sorts of things. But when you have a government that doesn't care about the people, this is the kind of stuff that happens.
Yeah, so Pat's asking about the voting again. And so why have a polling booth if it's mailed to you? Because some people, their ballot might got damaged or whatnot. They didn't receive one and they should have. So they go down to the county elections and they get handed a new ballot and they can vote right there. So that's why there's a voting booth there. That's what my knowledge is. And I did work on our election board. I don't have all the answers, but that sounds pretty common sense to me. And I worked at our elections on our election board for 6 years.
Mhm.
And I would see on election day people coming in and go, I got the wrong ballot, or how come this one doesn't have that? And, my ballot, the dog ate it, it got
Yeah.
wet in the rain, or whatever the case may be, and needing a ballot. And so they would, hand them a ballot and the people can go vote in the little
Mhm.
cubicle thing they have there. It just
Right.
folds up. It's a little folding table with a shade around it.
Yeah. Once upon a time, that's the way you had to do it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what we want to go back to,
that's
quite
essentially exactly
frankly.
much harder to cheat that way.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Um, Speaking of Oregon a little bit, I
Mhm.
wanted to talk a little bit about there's a story here, and it is in Willamette Weekly, and I'm going to paste it down there. And it has to do with the homeless deal and the Supreme Court decision, because the Supreme Court said that they basically, the court's decision didn't outlaw camping on sidewalks. Instead, it tossed the question back to each city and state. And so in this article, it it's, and I'll tell you, this is a lengthy article and it covers a lot of information. I found it very, very informative. It came out today, and because it covers where this started, gives you a lot of history, and but what it does do, what the U.S. Supreme Court decision did, as this article says, is it did kick it back to the states and the city. But our state passed a law, which this Supreme Court's decision did not undo. And the law in Oregon is that you can't ban camping in public places unless you have a place for them to go. So if you have some homeless facilities,
Mhm.
and then you can enforce it. But the cities still can, even with that law, you can still say, you know what, you can only be in one location, one spot for 24 hours, and that's it. And we don't allow tents, and we don't allow, I mean, you can do that. A city could, and a county could, and
Mhm.
whatnot. So it's an in-depth article of the homeless situation and the do's and the don'ts and what's possible here in the state of Oregon because of what are, of course, Democrat legislators
Mhm.
force fed the state of Oregon. And you know what? And Tina Kotek, who's our now governor, she was all in that. This is her baby.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of reminds me in some ways it's like Roe v. Wade. I mean, Roe v. Wade didn't get rid of abortion. It just
No.
kicked it back to the states. So each individual state has to decide what they want to do with it. Now, this same thing here applies to the homeless. So, yeah, you can. It's up to each individual state. And Oregon has decided that their state legislature is good with tents all over the place. So it's going to be up to Oregonians to like overturn that law or spend a fortune building something so they could do this, or just deal with, or just put up with people in the streets.
Yeah, I think cities, municipalities will be able to work around that. And because the thing is, this is, does it become a question I have? Does it become the city's problem when people are from out of state moving in, right? Where and a good part is, part of a lot of this homeless issue, one is the economy, but really it's the legalization of the drugs in the state of Oregon brought in so many undesirables. I'm just going to call it undesirables. They choose to live this way, and oh, I'm not going to go get harassed and get a ticket. I can just use and, live my life and be happy. And
Well, yeah. Well, if you build it, they will come, as the old
right.
adage goes. And Oregon's probably more than any other state in the country set the bar real low to come and like live on the streets and do drugs. And so we're getting these people from other states on top of that. And and of course, then of course there's a problem at the border. So we got drugs flooding in that are the worst variety than we've ever seen before. So if Oregon's ever going to fix its problem in this regard, I think one of the first things you got to do is you got to shut off giving people free stuff.
Yeah.
Um, it's tough medicine, but the first role of government is protect the law-abiding citizens, not to protect those who break the law. And leftists don't seem to get that.
I'll tell you, Don, I was talking with somebody about this in the last couple of days. We've had a war on drugs like almost my entire life. We've never won it.
No,
We're having a war on homelessness. We're never going to win it.
no.
There's always been, growing up, we had, they were called hobos. We had the railroad through my little town down
Yep.
in Southern California, and there was hobos down there.
Mhm.
And these were people that, frankly, in my opinion, chose to live like that. But I will tell you, I never saw that they caused any issue. They were transient. They were in for a while and out for a while. They certainly didn't want to live in that Southern California desert when it turned 117 degrees.
Mhm.
They went somewhere else.
Built-in
And
incentive.
well, you know what? I also, not all people that choose to live a freer lifestyle, I'll call it, are on drugs. When I was, it's very, very few, but when I was living in Hawaii, my husband and I were in Hawaii, we met a fellow who was from Colorado. And in the summer months, he would go back to Colorado. And in the winter months, he would live in Hawaii. And he
Mhm,
would come fly to Hawaii, buy a bicycle, live on the street homeless, get fed every single day because they're feeding them.
mhm,
They're in Ala Moana Park
mhm,
and right in Honolulu because that's where our sailboat was. And
mhm,
so, and he had a cell phone. He was clean cut. He was clean. There's showers there right on the beach.
mhm,
And he says, I just choose not to have the regular trappings of life.
mhm.
Okay, but he wasn't robbing. He had income. He just chose to live a life like that and he wasn't on drugs. That's
Sure.
not the norm.
No, and it's less the norm than it's ever been before. I mean, once upon a time, say 50, 60 years ago, a lot more of those people lived by, what do you call it? For lack of a better word, a moral code. They understood it
Hmm.
was wrong to mooch off other people.
Hmm.
Now that's all gone,
Yeah.
which takes me back to we you can't have a war on drugs. You got to have a war on immorality because that's what brings us to this place is people not following a moral code leads to this. So if you wanted to go back to the root causes, as the left love to talk about, the root causes are immorality. Um, but that's tough medicine because leftists want to do what they feel like, want to do what they want when they feel like it.
You
um,
know, it's a tough thing because we have compassion. We're
mhm,
compassionate people. And you want to give a hand up instead of just a handout. And our system was not, in my view, I mean, because I've talked with even family members, they go, well, we already have some sort of socialisms in our country. And it was Clinton that said welfare was not going to be a way of life. And he got more people off of the welfare system. He goes, okay, you know what? 2 years max. You
mhm,
have to take training and you got to get a job because it's drying up. And
mhm.
it's only supposed to be a temporary help. And I think to have compassion and help people temporarily, but at the same time, I'm thinking, is it the city's job for these people that are coming in because of, from out of state?
Mhm.
Well, I'm just going to do drugs and live here in my tent and camp here. It's a very different from helping people within your community that are falling on hard times.
Well, and
You know what I'm saying?
and what it goes back to, really, it goes back to the constitutional principle of small government. A quick story, and I think this is not 100% accurate, it's close. So I think it was President Adams had a son that was like a near do well, right? And lived on the streets, was a complete bum, all of that stuff. And some people who were concerned about people like him presented a proposal to Congress to, to put together a budget to give money to people like this. So this is way before income taxes and all that stuff. And he refused to sign it, even though it would have helped his son. And the reason was it was the wrong use for it was the wrong use for taxpayers' money, number one. And number two, if the people wanted to help him, they should help him directly. So it was not his right to go into the coffers of the government. That's other people's money to go help these people. And I think you have to go back to that principle. Compassion
Yeah.
is us individual private citizens helping people, not the government helping people. And people fail to make that distinction. Yeah, we should help people, but it should be private outfits that do it. Because when the government does it, there's a whole bunch of reasons what's wrong with that. But one of the big ones is you put a big pile of money is like a giant pile of poop. What are you going to get? You're going to get a whole bunch of flies, known as leftist elitists to that poop. And they are going to burn that. They're going to blow through that money and everything but what it's intended to give, what it's intended to fix. They have no interest in fixing that problem.
No, we don't. It's kind of like, well, the money will just keep coming in because Oregon has spent, I don't remember, I read a story, Oregon has spent billions
Mhm.
if it's not even in a trillion yet, but billions on homeless
Mhm.
problems. And there's no solutions. When you have Portland going, well, we'll just hand you all a tent.
Mhm.
We're going to help make you more comfortable
Right. Yeah.
because
Well,
that's
yeah. Well,
that's what they're doing,
so now
right?
you got organizations that specialize in building tent cities.
Yeah,
Literally, you
yeah.
got organizations that are experts. That's their business model. Their business model is not to get people off the streets. Their business model is to make them comfortable on the streets. And this is precisely what's wrong with it. Now you could argue, Don, hey, a private organization could like waste money too. Yes, but they can't waste billions of it, and they will run out of money. They will feel the impact. People will stop donating money to them. But when it's a government organization, there's no stopping that.
But then we have these NGOs, Don, that are part of the problem now,
Oh, yeah,
right?
same thing.
And you would say that's a public or a private entity.
Mhm.
But man, they're getting federal dollars. They're getting federal dollars, and
Yeah.
they are absolutely the problem of what's happening. I've been seeing videos
Mhm.
Michael Yans put out, and another fellow, I can't something
Mhm.
blue, about what's going on in the Darien.
Mhm.
And thankfully, I believe the new president in Panama is saying we're shutting this down. I
Yeah,
hope so.
yeah.
I hope so because the jungle, it's the people that have lost their lives
Mhm.
coming through that jungle is it's not humane, quite frankly. And Biden and Harris, oh yeah, our borders are has done jack.
Yeah, it's the sick part about it is, that could be fixed at the stroke of a pen too. Um,
Oh yeah.
and we don't get a fraction of those stories. When you think about all of the child trafficking and all that other stuff that has to be going on when you're walking, 2,000 miles through the jungle and desert to get here, I can't even fathom the kinds of things that are going on for those poor people before they even get to our southern border.
Oh yeah,
And that's,
absolutely. Speaking of child trafficking, I have a story here from PJ Media. The Biden administration has been involved in massive child trafficking. The Department of Human Services has lost at least 85,000 children who crossed the border illegally as unaccompanied minors after placing them with sponsors who may be trafficking the children into prostitution or forced labor. 85,000 children,
yeah.
children of various ages. And that is despicable.
And we call ourselves a first world country. Um, it's unbelievable.
When you don't have morals, when you don't have morals, you're not that any longer.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and I'll always say this: the yes, we've had a decline in terms of general citizenship's morality, no question about it. Now versus say 1960, right? But that's not been the biggest problem. The biggest problem has been the elitists have gone far worse than the regular citizen in the country. If you don't believe that, take a look at the Epstein deal,
Oh
right?
yeah.
That's the sort of thing I'd almost be willing to say that I don't want to say the majority. They are involved in that kind of stuff. Joe Citizen's not doing that stuff. It's the people who run things that are doing that stuff.
It
And,
is.
yeah, and so we have to get rid of them.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to vote these people out, and we need to clean house at the tops of these administrations, different departments and whatnot, and hold people accountable for the lousy job that they're doing. Um, and like of these children that have gone missing, unaccounted for, 85,000 people, kids. It's because they didn't want them in cages that the media could, take a picture of. Because when Trump had our border under control, they were doing DNA testing to make sure that these minors were with an adult that they were related to,
Mhm.
and rescuing kids, I believe, out of wrong, bad situations. And the Biden administration is, no, let's just shove them through. No accountability to where they're going, who they're going with. And that should be big news, and it isn't.
Well, it isn't
It isn't.
because the people that run big media, they're part of it.
They
But
are.
what other conclusion could you possibly draw? Which is just a great segue. I just have to mention this. So we've all by now seen the result of the debate, if you want to call it a debate, and we saw the condition of the Democratic president. Right? I saw one of this. One, every now and then you see something that just kind of blows your mind, and here's the one that blew my mind. People watched that, they polled him, and there were still, I think it was like 32% of people who were going to vote for him anyway.
Yeah.
So that tells you the percentage of the population that is unreasonable. In other words, they're no longer capable of thinking that you would vote for someone who carries around the nuclear football, who now, without a doubt, you know he's not been president. Somebody else is doing the job, not
Yep.
him, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's where Peter Ducey in the White House News, part of the press corps there, I watched a video and he asked, what's her name? That the gal who's the press secretary. He asked her, so since Biden now can't do anything after 8 o'clock at night, and he asked it, and I might not have the exact hour right, but you'll get the gist. And he says, so at 2 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning, there's a nuclear emergency. Who are you talking to? Is it going to be Joe Biden? And you know what that woman did? And then he followed it up with another question about that. You
mhm.
know what KJBP. She folded the book up and said, I'm done here, and
Yeah, I
walked
saw
out
that.
and never addressed it. I'm like, how do
Well,
you he left her speechless. She didn't know what the hell to say. So
it's
I'm thinking in my mind, I'm going, let's see, is she tired of telling the lie? I'm not going there. I just can't lie this good.
she couldn't come up with a lie that good. That's essentially because she's a great liar.
Oh boy. She is.
She
You
has
saw that
indeed.
too. Oh man.
That's
I
the worst
Peter
job in the
Ducey
world
should win an award for that.
because she has the worst job in the world. The worst job in the world.
Oh
I
yeah.
remember when wasn't Stephanopoulos in that job for Clinton back in the
Yeah,
day?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
And I
so.
used to think he had the worst job in the world when the whole Monica thing went down. Like, how do you go in front of the camera and lie about that? But this here, you literally are talking about a guy who is in some stage of dementia. It's been obvious to us for probably three,
Yes.
4 years. I thought it was the case before the last election.
Me too. Me too. I thought,
Yeah,
how can they run this guy? It was Basement Joe.
yeah, and they hit him. Did you see the
They
data when
did.
they
They
showed
hit him. And
all the presidents since Carter? They gave the number of press appearances that they'd given,
yeah.
and I can't remember the exact numbers anymore, but he had given like 25% of the appearances of the next lowest person. In fact, they said Reagan, and this was the time period after he got shot, he gave more press appearances
Yeah.
after he got shot than this guy. So it's utterly amazing.
Well, Nicholas, sorry, I have to watch my speech. Don't want to get kicked off of something. And Lord, believe me, we do get kicked off sometimes. So I'll watch it.
I think we've been good as you could possibly be.
We
I've really
try.
refrained from criticizing him personally. I have. It's, because this is the thing, and we have to always remember this. If he should get replaced, it's just going to be another person who's just like him, whoever
Oh,
it is. So we need to stay focused on the results of Democratic policies. What the Democrats want to do is, if they do it, I don't think they will. They'll replace them with somebody else and then blame it on Biden.
oh, 100%.
Uh,
It's it's interesting watching the demise of the Democrat Party. And this is the bed that they made.
oh,
And they don't want Harris at all. At
well,
all, at all, at
I
all.
heard, I can't remember who it was. I don't want to claim originality because I didn't come up with this. I heard this, and it was pretty good. It was a podcast, and this person said this. This is the hubris of the intellectual elite. Their strategy was to not talk about how awful any of the things you usually would talk about in an election. What are you talking about in an election? Is usually going to be jobs inflation, interest rates, that's what elections are won and lost on, right? If you don't have high inflation, that's what's so you're not going to talk about any of that stuff because it's been so horrible. Let's focus on demonizing the other candidate and making sure he's a criminal, he can't even run. Well, once they saw that none of that worked, now what are you going to do? And they saw that, so they decided, I think this other person, I heard things. Let's get rid of Biden. Well, how do we get rid? We can't get rid of him. Well, let's let him go out there and mess up, and then maybe he'll take himself out. Well, they
Right.
did that, but guess what? Jill rather. Jill's not letting him take himself out. So now they have, which goes to show you can have all the plans in the world, right? But your hubris eventually gets you. And I think that's what's happened to them. I don't think they had this scenario in their head.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And you it's kind of funny watching the legacy media going around in a circle, One day they're going, he can't run. And then the next is, oh no, we're right 100% behind him. It's just like, and I turn my face because it's the two sides, right?
Yeah,
The two
it,
faced
yeah,
going, oh, it's just too funny watching, going, yeah, you're going to have it. You got your marching
mhm,
orders now. And so all the narrative changes. It's pretty funny to watch, but there's that 30 odd percent
mhm.
that are still asleep and they're not seeing what we're seeing, Don.
Yeah, and they're not gonna because they don't want to see. You will
No.
always have them. So
Yeah.
our dog fight will always be for what you might call we call them independents. And that's just probably some better word than that. But that next, so 30% get it, 30% are like incapable of reasoning. That leaves you with the 40% in the middle, and we got to win them.
We
And
do.
and those
Hey,
people don't think so.
you're right. We have a little bit of good news, and I got a couple of good news stories. So I'm just posted that one, and this is 3 states file emergency Supreme Court petition to stop Biden's student loan repayment program. Well, the Supreme Court already, made a decision on that, and Biden said, "Yeah, well, I'm going to do it this way in a roundabout way." So on July 5th, and I hadn't heard about this until today.
Hmm.
Um, South Carolina, Texas, and Alaska have petitioned the High Court to halt the saving on a valuable education. It's the SAVE plan
Let's see.
after a key part of it was allowed to resume. So, because of that, the education department has paused the loan payment for 3 million borrowers. So, that is good news. Thank you to those 3 states,
Yeah,
right?
that is so
Taking
awesome.
it to court. And, but we're at the lawlessness stage. Doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says. They just go, no, we're doing it anyway.
Sure.
So South Carolina, Texas, and Alaska, bless you for doing that. And the Democrats are now worried that New York is a battleground state. I love it. They kind of thought they had that in the camp, right?
Oh
And
my goodness.
another good news story, and I think this is very good. Columbia University removes 3 deans for very troubling anti Semitic text messages.
Yeah, that is huge. Now they'd only do that because they got massive pressure. Um,
Yes,
massive.
yes, absolutely. And, but I'll take it. I will take it.
Mhm,
And they were all like on a Zoom thing.
mhm.
And so on May 31st, Columbia University hosted a panel discussion, and these some of these deans were texting each other, and other people got screenshots of them. So Kristen Crom, formerly the dean of the undergraduate student life, Matthew Potashnik, formerly the Associate Dean for Student and Family Support, and Susan Chang Kim, formerly the Vice Dean and Chief Administrative Officer, were all asked to step down from their positions after their texts became public. So, you know what? I'm glad. I'm glad. Your true colors, you can spew this stuff,
Mhm.
and you're gone. And as it should be.
No, it's awesome because as that stuff becomes popular to do, or at least when there's no blowback from doing it, it'll
Hmm.
escalate. It will escalate. That's if you look at the history of Germany in the 30s, it didn't start with them gassing people. It started with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's all the good news I have. I hope everybody tries to stay cool. The
Mhm.
temperatures are supposed to cool off a little.
Yeah, that's nice. But it's summertime, like what Snoopy said, summertime, summertime. Oh, that was supper time. Sorry.
Uh, yes,
And speaking of that, it's almost supper time. My favorite
it
time.
is.
I take my wife on a really expensive date night every Wednesday night to Dairy Queen.
If it was in California, it'd be even more expensive at that $20 an hour rate, and the fast food places in California, what I've heard and read about, they're laying off people.
That is such a
Oh
it's so terrible. And the thing is, that's the first rung on the economic ladder for teenagers,
yeah.
and
Yes.
the left is like snatching it away from 'em. Not to mention adverse impact on business people and all of that, but it's destroying, as usual, the underclass is who it hurts first. And
Yeah.
that's what the left is always about. We got to do one of these times. We got to do a topic of the sins of the Democratic Party and just run through all of them.
Oh,
That might take the whole show.
that would be okay. That would be okay. I think that would be worth it.
But the historic things they've done, there's so many. I saw a speaker. I'll have to send you. I'll send a text. I found another guy who's a phenomenal speaker. And he talks about all the crimes they've done, and you can't. It's like stuff history's forgotten about. I mean, they have been the party of demons from the beginning.
Yes. Yes, they
Uh,
have. Yes, they have. That's why I'm not in that party. I don't want to be in
uh,
that party.
right,
Never been. And well, actually, I have to retract that last statement. I was for just a couple years, and then I went, "Oh my God." And I
well,
switched back.
my first two elections I was in, and it was the Ronald Reagan thing that got me out of there. But wow, when you start listing all the things, it's like unbelievable, and they're still doing it, and because they had a popular media in their hip pocket, people don't learn about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's propaganda. It's propaganda, and that's the beauty of, you know, um, people like us doing this. There's a lot of alternative news out there, a lot of news sources, and that are willing to talk about what is truly happening. And we're just trying to bring up some stories and talk, bring some truth,
Well, there's
teach a little history, bring some truth.
a lot of positive things are really going on. I mean, whether nationally or locally, we're talking about these big issues. It all sounds negative. There's so many positive things. Like I think we talked about this story like a week or two ago, where there was a baseball team came out to play, and the announcer comes on and says, "I'm not going to do the Star Spangled Banner," and the fans stood up and sang it anyway. That's the kind of stuff you got to do. You look at the
That's right.
tremendous hit that Bud Light has taken, Target has taken, these anti Disney have taken, these anti-American companies are taking like huge hits. It's that kind of stuff on a grassroots roots level. Anytime you have an opportunity to disregard, not comply, then don't comply. Going to
Absolutely.
school board meetings, pulling your kids out of the schools, going down there and making a fracas. Whatever it is, that's all about that's stopping the commie train in its tracks.
It is. We have to do this at every level. Every
Every,
level. That's how you take it all back, is
yeah,
by being involved. Conservatives being involved
yeah.
and caring enough about our country to get out of the comfort zone and putting ourselves out there to take it back.
Mhm. Yeah, don't have to be mean. You do have
Nope.
to be firm, right? But being nice doesn't mean rolling over. Too many times we take, nice guys come in last. What that really means is people who roll over come in last, right? You can be firm and still say no. You can say no nicely,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So, yeah. Anyways, there you have it. Was that time, huh? Oh my goodness, you talk a whole lot, Sonny.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dawn. I'm so sorry.
You guys are so much fun. Thank you all for joining us once again. Another wonderful Wednesday. I can never get enough of my wonderful Wednesdays.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. All right, so let's see. Do I have to hit end stream? Is that how this works?
Yep.
If I hit that, will we still be on?